Now, Top Writers Festival in Australia has been called off amid controversy over the cancellation of an Australian Palestinian activist and author. The organisers of Adelaide Writers Week announced the event could no longer go ahead following a wave of speaker withdrawals and board resignations. The walkouts were prompted by the removal of Randa Abdel-Fattah from the lineup. The boycott swelled to 180 writers, including a former Greek finance minister and New Zealand's former Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. Abdel-Fattah has called her ban insulting and racist. Well, joining us to talk about this from Sydney is Hannah Ferguson. She's a best-selling author and the Chief Executive Officer of Cheek Media, which is an independent news commentary platform. Hannah, thank you for your time. So you're one of many writers who've withdrawn from the festival in Adelaide. First of all, can you tell us what made you decide that you no longer wanted to participate?
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Folly. Last week on Thursday, I had already agreed to 2 sessions at the Adelaide Writers Festival next month, and I received a letter and formal statement from the board of the Adelaide Festival informing me that Dr. Abdel-Fattah had been removed as a speaker. Now, to my knowledge, she's one of only 2 Palestinian authors that were featured at the event, and in the statement there were clear conflations made as to her being culturally sensitive and linking her presence at the festival to the Bondi terror attack, whilst also noting that she had no part in that. And it felt to me that a Palestinian author was being conflated as culturally sensitive in her identity with this event in proximity to the Bondi terror attack that Australia's just experienced. And to me, that felt all wrong. It felt like an act of censorship and racism, and I immediately withdrew from the festival.
Okay, so you withdrew as an act of solidarity with Randa, or as a protest against how the festival handled this?
Oh, absolutely both. I think the immediate reading of the statement, that conflation of a Palestinian author with the Bondi terror attack as being culturally sensitive, immediately raised alarm bells in me as an act of censorship and potentially an act of racism again against her personally. And so it felt like the only right thing to do to stand up in solidarity with her, but to also send a clear message to the festival that that's not what I'm willing to participate in as an author.
Just to clarify, what do you think is a real reason why Randa Abdel-Fattah was disinvited? I mean, the festival's board said this was not about identity or dissent, but about cultural sensitivity following the Bondi attack. Do you believe that explanation? And if not, why do you think they did?
No, personally, there's no other way to interpret it than the board being pressured by a Zionist lobby or something of that nature. And a lot of major institutions in Australia are facing significant pressure to silence Palestinian voices that are criticising the genocide Israel's committing against Palestine. So it's really difficult to interpret this as anything other than further suppression of those voices.
2 years ago, Hannah, Randa Abdel-Fattah publicly supported calls for Jewish author Thomas Friedman to be removed from the festival's programme. Friedman wasn't removed at the time. Do you think there is a risk here that this looks like selective free speech for those we agree with, but not for others?
Absolutely. And we're seeing this equivalence drawn between Randa's work and what those comments Friedman made, when actually Friedman was making clear statements that were linking Palestinians to be vermin that needed to be eradicated. Like, when we're looking at that, that's significantly different to the comments that Dr. Abdel-Fattah has made. And so I think that there is something false here that's in that comparative that's being made by a lot of media outlets in Australia and abroad. And I think that there's a real concern here, exactly as you've suggested, that there is selective censorship happening and being applied to Palestinian voices and advocates.
But what do you say to those who say that this is a bit hypocritical? I mean, why is disinviting a writer unacceptable now but acceptable then?
Well, they're completely different comments. The nature of the comments and the criticism is different. And I think what has happened in uniquely selecting Dr. Abdel-Fattah out, and in the statement linking to the Bondi terror attack, an extreme event, the mass killing of 15 people targeting the Jewish community, but in the statement linking to Dr. Abdel-Fattah as a Palestinian woman is entirely problematic. And it is censorship and it is racism.
So the festival, Writers' Week, has now been cancelled entirely. What message does such an act of solidarity send, do you think, to similar institutions and event organisers?
I think it sends a clear message that writers in Australia, that members of the arts in Australia are unwilling to participate in events that engage in acts of racism, that attempt to suppress voices, that aren't interested in platforming and putting at the forefront of the event freedom of speech. So I think that this is actually a really strong message by a lot of Australians across the media landscape from different sides of the political spectrum too, that we will stand in solidarity together in support of Dr. Abdel-Fattah and against this kind of censorship and suppression.
Hannah, thank you so much for talking to us about this. Thank you for your time. Hannah Ferguson joining us there from Sydney.
Thank you so much for having me, Folly.
Don't miss out. Get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news and expert insights. Like, share, stay ahead.